All right, so how are we doing? I'm going too fast. Am I talking too fast? Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Question.
All those things that you showed, can Spark do all of that, or?
So this is the part where I talk about what Spark can do. But yes, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. There's not very many things within that kind of gallery that I'd say Spark can't do. Spark doesn't do any like location-based stuff, so you can't say, oh, at this particular spot of the world. Although I have seen some people, there is like a back-end scripting interface, so I have seen people kind of messing with that. So I wouldn't be surprised if you could do it, but not sort of out of the box, like it doesn't really provide that. So specifically what Spark AR does is it's if you've worked with, say, Unity or Maya or any kind of 3D package, you've got that kind of standard interface where you're just kind of interfacing with, you've got a viewport into a 3D world and you can move stuff around. That's fundamentally what Spark is. But then it allows you to, it works on Windows and Mac, and then it allows you to bring in assets. So it's kind of like if you think of something like, editing video with Premiere, or doing something with After Effects where you've got a bunch of different assets that might be images or sound or video, things like that, and you kind of bring them all together and you make something kind of out of that. That's basically what Spark does. So it's sort of a little bit of a catalyst for taking all those other pieces. You don't actually build 3D models with it. You don't do audio editing or anything like that. You just kind of take all those pieces and kind of make them into interactive filters. And then you can take those all those assets and you can preview them really quickly. This is one of the things that certainly impressed me very, very much about Spark, is the kind of the rapid iteration that you can do. It's you plug your phone in through a USB cable, you hit a button, and literally it's like seconds later you have that effect and you can use it. So there is no rendering involved or anything. It's like right away. You can try it out. In fact, you can try it out right inside the software, as we'll see as well. But on your phone, it's super fast to get on your phone. And then once you've kind of done that, you can then publish those effects to Instagram and Facebook, and then there's a little interface for sort of submitting them for approval. And once they're approved, then we get into that point where people can follow you and get your filters and such. We'll see though, you can also test them out. You can send people links to test the filters before you've actually published them as well. And I've got some examples of that coming up. And then of course, once you've done that, then you get into analytics and you say, okay, hey, how many people are using this filter, et cetera, et cetera. So just talk technically about Spark AR. So there's a few different types of tracking, and this again kind of comes back to your question, like what are sort of the capabilities there? Face tracking is the most fundamental one, and it's also probably the most common one. Any of those things like the puppy filter or something stuck on your head is going to be basically face tracking. It's just analyzing where your features are. It'll also do plane tracking. So plane tracking is just taking your phone and pointing it at a flat surface, and then bing, there's something there. So if you wanted to do like a Spider-Man standing beside you, you could do that. You don't require a marker or anything else. It just kind of generates something on a flat surface. This is marker tracking. So for example, like the wine labels would use something like this. So you point your phone at it, and then it generates whatever your 3D model or animation is. And then it also does hand tracking. I haven't really used the hand tracking much myself. I think it's pretty limited. I think it basically tracks the position of your hand. I don't think it'll tell you where your fingernails are and everything. But you can still use it for some interaction. Now the one type of tracking that it really excels in is face tracking. And you can get all kinds of crazy detail. You can tell where eyeballs are looking and where the edges of your eyes are, and how much your mouth is open, and all that kind of stuff. And you might say, well, I mean, what's the use of that? But it really helps in terms of the face effects that need to fit your face, so it can deform things to fit your face. And also, you can use all of those things, as we'll see, as triggers. So you can say, well, when somebody blinks their eyes, I'm going to change the glasses on their face or something like that. So by giving you access to all those features, it kind of opens up kind of the interface possibilities for your users. So again, here's sort of a very basic example of tracking objects just to your head. You can see there's a little bit going on with his eyebrows, where his eyebrows are moving and the thing's kind of moving with them, but pretty basic and kind of frivolous, sort of fun effect. whereas this is a more practical effect. So you've got sunglasses or eyeglasses, and you can see she's nodding her head to sort of change something about them. There's also a little bit of an interface there. I have a pointer on this thing. There's a little interface there where you can switch, I guess, different types of glasses or whatever it is. And I mean, yeah, this is all doable in Spark. Face-fitting masks, again, having all that detail that you can basically tell where every feature on your face is, allows you to make things stick really closely. And some of the examples we'll look at will be specifically sort of for this. You can also do animated textures. So if you want to do some kind of animated face masks or just use animations anywhere else, then you can do that. It does some really crazy stuff in terms of facial deformation. So again, because you can track something very closely to all the features, you can take a 3D model of a face, and it can extract the texture from your camera, or like your photo, your image, and then stick that on the 3D model, and then start to mess with that 3D model. And so you can do these kind of really interesting real-time distortion effects, and we're going to look at one of those as well. Here's another particularly cool example, which is sort of a combination of that and also just sort of remapping like where the textures are on the model. And this one's a little more involved. So that head at the beginning is most likely just basically a 3D model of his head with his texture on it, and then he's kind of animating that, breaking it apart, and transitioning it into the other head. And again, markers, so business card, simple business card example. And again, I'm kind of talking about the things that Spark can do now. This is an interesting one because it's not an official Sour Patch product effect. It's somebody kind of did this and said it, and is now trying to get that brand interested in it, which is kind of I guess a reverse way of marketing. But I think they did a pretty good job of it. And this again, I was talking about plane tracking. I'm pretty sure this wasn't done in Spark, but it's certainly the sort of thing that you could do. You could basically just, as long as you've got a flat surface, you can kind of lock something to that. Spark tends to be a little, it's not quite as accurate as this with planar effects. So I would suspect that whale would probably jump around a little bit if you did it in Spark, but you could certainly do it. One of the other things that kind of makes it really powerful, and I sort of hinted at this earlier, is there's kind of a visual scripting within Spark. So they have this thing called the patch editor, and at its kind of core, it allows you to hook things up together. So if I want to hook up like an eye blink with changing the glasses or scaling an object or something like that, then I can just basically kind of drag connections together and make those things happen. But then you can make things that are more complicated than that. You can combine these together. You can share them, and trade them, and then there's a bit of a scripting language, reactive JavaScript, kind of ties into this as well, so you can do more complicated things. And that sort of opens the door to doing things like this. So this is basically a face-controlled game, where as he opens his mouth, he's kind of controlling like the height of that ship. I think this is one of those areas where we're just kind of scratching the surface. It's interesting to think of your face as an interface. I think a lot of the examples I've seen though are just not that practical. Like you need to close your eyes to do something, or shake your head, or you can't really play games that way. But I think there's a lot of potential for it. And here's a couple of other examples. I like the 2048 one, it's pretty good. I've seen some other games as well where they do those things where you put a card on your head that says something, you don't know what it is, which is another kind of fun one. So I'm going to give you a minute to just kind of go to this web page, because basically what it is, it's just a Google page that has a bunch of links on it. And some of the demos that I'm doing tonight, I kind of want this to be somewhat interactive. And again, because you all have smartphones, you can all do this. So I've got a web page that has links for all the effects that I'm going to kind of do in Spark and a few other ones. And it also has links to the slides if you want the slides afterwards. Yeah, just kind of either write that down maybe quickly or just go ahead and go to it.